The quarterly town hall was packed, every department squeezed into the auditorium like sardines in a can. My slides lit up the giant screen. 6 months of data analysis, late nights fueled by energy drinks, weekends sacrificed to spreadsheets and regression models. I had built every chart, tested every hypothesis, lived and breathed this project until it was perfect. But when our VP, Mr. Caldwell, called Fiona to the stage, she walked up there like she owned every pixel on that screen. Her heels clicked confidently across the polished floor as she approached the microphone. My stomach twisted into knots. "Ladies and gentlemen, Fiona has put together something truly exceptional," Caldwell announced, gesturing toward my work displayed behind her. The applause thundered through the room. I sat frozen in the back row, my hands trembling on my notebook. Co-workers turned to smile at Fiona, nodding with approval. She soaked it up, her face glowing under the stage lights. My brain buzzed with disbelief. Then anger. Then something colder. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. And that whisper grew louder the moment the spotlight hit her face. That night, our family celebrated Fiona's brilliance at Romano's, our favorite Italian place since childhood. The restaurant hummed with dinner conversation, but our table might as well have been center stage. My parents couldn't stop gushing. "Our eldest daughter, the corporate genius," Dad beamed, raising his wine glass toward Fiona. "I always knew she'd make it big." Mom nodded enthusiastically, her eyes sparkling with pride. 28 years old and already presenting to VPs? Where did we go right? Fiona smirked at me across the table, twirling pasta around her fork like she didn't have a care in the world. Her expression dared me to ruin her moment, to be the jealous little sister who couldn't handle success. I kept my fork moving mechanically, swallowing both marinara sauce and pure rage. Every bite tasted like betrayal. But inside, I made myself a promise that burned hotter than the garlic bread. I would make sure the truth came out, and she would regret stealing not just my work, but my voice. The only question was when to strike. The next morning, I arrived at the office 30 minutes early. The building was quiet, just the hum of computers and the distant sound of the cleaning crew finishing up. I needed evidence, and I needed it bulletproof. I combed through my inbox like a detective, searching for clues, draft emails, timestamps, proposal versions, every digital breadcrumb that proved the project was mine from start to finish. Fiona had been clever, I'll give her that. She had only forwarded my work to Caldwell, removing my name from the header and inserting hers. But email headers don't lie, and revision histories tell the real story. I copied everything into a private folder, organizing it by date and relevance. The file name was simple: insurance. Because that's exactly what this was: insurance against my sister's betrayal. As my rage crystallized into something harder and more focused, I realized I didn't need to confront her yet. I needed her to dig her own grave deeper first. And she was already holding the shovel. By lunchtime, the office buzzed like a beehive. Everyone was talking about Fiona's incredible presentation. I walked through the break room, past clusters of coworkers debating her future. "She's definitely getting that promotion," whispered Janet from accounting. "Caldwell looked impressed," added Tom from marketing. "I heard they're fast-tracking her for the leadership program." The urge to scream nearly boiled over. My fingernails pressed crescents into my palms as I forced myself to stay calm. Instead of exploding, I did something smarter. I asked innocent questions. "Did she explain how the regression models work?" I asked Janet, stirring sugar into my coffee. Janet's face went blank. I think so." And the error margins in the dataset? I pressed Tom gently. He shifted uncomfortably. She covered all the technical stuff, I'm sure. Their uncertain expressions told me everything. They hadn't noticed the holes in her knowledge because they weren't looking for them. But I had planted seeds of doubt. Soon, those seeds would turn into cracks in her image. That Saturday, Fiona showed up at my apartment with a bottle of champagne and that same smug smile. She made herself comfortable on my couch, kicking off her designer heels like she owned the place. "Cheers to corporate success," she laughed, popping the cork. Champagne fizz sprayed across my coffee table. "This presentation is just the beginning, you know. Caldwell mentioned bigger projects coming my way." I gripped my glass tighter than necessary. "Congratulations," I managed through gritted teeth. "Don't take it personally, Camille," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "You do the nerd work behind the scenes. I make it shine for the executives. It's a perfect partnership." My nails dug into my palms so hard, they left crescents that lasted for hours. But I smiled anyway, refilling her glass with steady hands. "You're right. We make a good team." Let her think I was harmless, defeated, accepting of my place in her shadow. That was my best disguise for what was coming, because harmless was the last thing I planned to be. Monday morning brought news that made my coffee taste like acid. HR announced that Fiona was being considered for the senior analyst position, the exact role I had been working toward for 2 years. She strutted down the hallway afterward like a peacock, accepting congratulations from coworkers who didn't know the truth. Every smile felt like a knife in my back. My stomach churned watching her bask in praise for my achievements. But then something clicked. Her promotion would actually make the eventual crash more spectacular. The higher she climbed using my work as her ladder, the harder and more public her fall would be. I told myself to think strategically. Patience is the blade that cuts the deepest, and revenge tastes sweeter when it's perfectly timed. As I watched her disappear into Caldwell's office for another strategy discussion, I felt my resolve harden like steel. She was building her castle on sand, and I was the tide coming in, and I was sharpening mine in silence.
Late Thursday evening, the office was empty except for security guards and the occasional workaholic. Perfect timing for what I needed to do. Fiona's office door was unlocked. First mistake in what would become a series of them. Her desk was organized to obsessive perfection, every pen in its place, every document filed precisely, but her bottom drawer wasn't locked. Rookie mistake. Inside, I found a printed copy of my complete report with my name carefully whited out and replaced with hers in neat handwriting. She'd even reprinted the cover page to make it look official. The audacity was breathtaking. I photographed every page with my phone, making sure the timestamps were visible. The metadata would prove when these photos were taken, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. Then I slid everything back exactly as I'd found it, even repositioning her stapler the same way. She'd never know I had been there, never suspect her fortress had been infiltrated. But I knew something she didn't. Her arrogance would become my greatest weapon. She had no idea I was already inside her fortress. The next afternoon, Mr. Caldwell called me into his corner office, unexpectedly. His space was all dark wood and leather chairs, designed to intimidate. He gestured for me to sit across from his massive desk. "Camille, I've noticed you've been quieter than usual lately," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Are you okay with Fiona taking the lead on these big projects?" I forced my most professional smile. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell, whatever's best for the team." But then I saw my opening. "Although," I said carefully, "if you'd ever like me to explain how the predictive modeling actually works, I'd be happy to walk through the technical details." His eyebrows shot up with interest. That would be helpful, actually. For the next 10 minutes, I explained algorithms, statistical significance, and data validation methods with the confidence that comes from actually understanding your work. Caldwell took notes, asked pointed questions, and his expression grew more thoughtful with each answer. When I left his office, I knew curiosity had been sparked in his mind, and once curiosity bites, it never lets go. Over the next 2 weeks, Caldwell began pulling me into meetings without Fiona. Nothing dramatic, just casual requests for my input on data interpretation or methodology questions. He never said much about it, but his questions hinted that he was starting to suspect something. "Camille, walk me through this correlation analysis again," he'd say during small strategy sessions. I gave just enough technical detail to demonstrate deep knowledge without explicitly throwing Fiona under the bus. Not yet. The key was to let him reach his own conclusions. Meanwhile, Fiona continued floating through the office like she owned the place, completely oblivious to the subtle shift happening around her. She had no idea that the ground beneath her feet was shifting, that foundations were cracking. Watching her walk into rooms with absolute confidence, believing she was untouchable, gave me energy. Every day I felt stronger, more focused. She was a house of cards in a windstorm, and I was the weather system approaching. And soon, it would crumble under her feet. The breaking point came during a senior strategy session 2 weeks later. The conference room was packed with department heads and executives, all eager to hear about expanding our analytical capabilities. Caldwell asked Fiona to explain the mathematical foundation behind our risk assessment model. It should have been simple for someone who'd supposedly created it. She froze, complete deer in headlights paralysis. "Well," she stammered, sweat glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights. "The formula is, it's a standard deviation calculation that, Her words fumbled and died. The silence stretched like taffy, sticky and uncomfortable. Every eye in the room watched her struggle with concepts she'd never actually understood. Caldwell's eyes flicked to me across the table. I stayed perfectly still, letting the discomfort grow until even the air conditioning seemed too loud. The meeting ended in awkward silence, people shuffling papers and avoiding eye contact. Fiona brushed it off afterward, laughing about being put on the spot, but cracks had definitely formed in her facade, and this one was about to split wide open.
The next day, my closest coworker Naomi cornered me in the break room during our usual afternoon coffee run. She looked around nervously, then leaned in close. "Camille," she whispered, her voice low but steady. "I know that work was yours." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I've seen your drafts. I remember all those late nights when you were here until midnight running analyses. Fiona's never stayed past 5:30 in her life." Naomi had always been observant, quiet but sharp. She noticed things others missed. The coffee-stained notebooks on my desk, the way I knew every detail of the project without consulting notes. I made her promise to keep quiet for now, but I filed away her loyalty like a secret weapon. If things got ugly, having a witness could slice deeper than any document. "Just be careful," she added, squeezing my arm. "People like Fiona don't go down easy." I knew things were about to get ugly. Fiona's birthday dinner fell on a Friday night at the upscale steakhouse downtown. Family and friends filled a private dining room, everyone dressed in their finest clothes for the golden child celebration. She raised her champagne glass high, beaming at her audience. "This has been such an incredible year," she announced, "and with my upcoming promotion, next year's going to be even better." Everyone clapped and cheered. Dad wiped away a proud tear. Mom snapped photos like Fiona was accepting an Oscar. I sat at the end of the table, smiling and nodding with everyone else, but my purse held something they couldn't see. A flash drive containing every piece of evidence I'd compiled over the past month. Screenshots, emails, timestamps, photographs, enough digital ammunition to level a city. I already knew the perfect stage for detonation.
The quarterly review meeting was scheduled for next Friday, where Fiona would be expected to present our next phase of analysis to the entire executive team. The celebration would soon turn into her downfall. The following Monday, our department received exciting news. The company wanted to expand our analytical methods across all branches, and they needed someone to create a training workshop for other teams. Naturally, they asked Fiona to lead it. I watched her face cycle through emotions: pride, panic, determination, then back to panic. She scheduled a collaboration session with me that afternoon, which was code for help me figure out how to teach something I don't understand. I just need you to help polish the presentation slides, she said, trying to sound casual. I played along, sending her vague notes and incomplete explanations, just enough to seem helpful, not enough to actually save her. Watching her struggle in private was almost sweet, but I wanted more. I wanted her to fail publicly in a room full of colleagues who could witness her incompetence firsthand. And that chance came faster than I expected. The training workshop was scheduled in our largest conference room with representatives from every department. 30 people eager to learn the revolutionary methods that Fiona had supposedly pioneered. She stood at the front, clicking through slides with increasing desperation. Her voice cracked as she mixed up technical terms and flipped to slides in the wrong order. The correlation coefficient indicates... Wait, that's not right, she mumbled, frantically clicking her remote. Murmurs rippled through the audience. People exchanged confused glances. Someone in the back asked a clarifying question that made Fiona's face go pale. Caldwell sat stone-faced in the corner, arms crossed, watching her stumble through concepts she'd never truly grasped. His expression grew darker with each fumbled explanation. I sat in the front row with perfect posture, taking notes and nodding politely like a supportive colleague. Inside, I was savoring every second of her unraveling. This was just the opening act. The main show hadn't even started. Her collapse had only just begun. After the workshop disaster, Caldwell didn't wait long to act. His secretary called me first thing Tuesday morning, asking me to come to his office immediately. He was standing by his window when I entered, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the city skyline. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before he turned around. "Camille," he said slowly, "I need you to tell me honestly, whose work is this really?" My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice measured and professional. "Do you want me to prove it to you, Mr. Caldwell?" I slid a manila folder across his polished desk. Not everything I had, just enough to start the conversation. Emails with timestamps, draft versions showing my authorship, technical notes in my handwriting. He opened the folder and read in silence for 5 full minutes. I watched his expression change from skeptical to surprised to grimly determined. "I see," he said finally, closing the folder with deliberate precision. I walked out of his office knowing the trap had been fully set, all the pieces positioned perfectly, and Fiona was walking straight into it. Word of the investigation trickled down to our parents by Wednesday. Mom called me that evening, her voice strained with worry. "Camille, honey, what's this about you and Fiona having problems at work?" Fiona had gotten to them first, spinning her version of events. According to her, I was having a breakdown, sabotaging her career out of jealousy and spite. "She's worked so hard for this promotion," Mom pleaded. "Can't you just let her shine?" For the first time in my life, I looked my mother in the eye and said the words I should have said years ago. "She stole from me, Mom. She took my work and put her name on it."
The silence that followed stretched across our kitchen like a chasm. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mom's face crumpled as reality began penetrating the golden child mythology they'd built around Fiona. "But she's your sister," Mom whispered. "She stopped being my sister when she decided I was expendable." Once illusions break, they don't mend. Back at the office, battle lines were being drawn. The workplace split into factions as whispers spread through every department. Some people sided with Fiona, charmed by her confidence and unwilling to believe someone so polished could be a fraud. Others began asking questions, remembering late nights when I'd been there working while she'd been at happy hours. Naomi subtly spread the truth without naming me directly, dropping hints in conversations by the coffee machine and during lunch breaks. Isn't it weird how Fiona couldn't answer those technical questions? I remember Camille working on that model for months. By Thursday afternoon, the shift was visible. People no longer greeted Fiona with the same warm smiles. Conversations stopped when she walked into rooms. The office ecosystem was rejecting her like a foreign antibody. She noticed the change, her eyes darting nervously around the floor. For the first time, I saw fear creep across her face. And fear makes people reckless. Friday morning, I sent the email that would end everything. One message to Caldwell with carefully organized attachments, draft versions showing progression of ideas, timestamps proving authorship, forwarded emails revealing Fiona's theft. Subject line, clarity. I hit send at 9:17 a.m. and watched the digital missile fly toward its target. By 11:30, Fiona was called into HR. I watched her walk past my desk, her usual confidence completely stripped away. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she clutched a folder against her chest. She didn't look at me, but I could feel the panic radiating from her like heat. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring each drop. This was better than any champagne celebration. Watching her perfect world crumble was intoxicating. The unraveling was only going to accelerate. The HR meeting stretched across 3 days. I could track Fiona's desperation by the volume of her voice echoing from the conference room. Her excuses grew wilder by the hour. First, she blamed miscommunication. Then she claimed it was collaborative work that had been misrepresented. By Wednesday, she was pointing fingers at interns, at me, at anyone who might absorb some blame. But the digital files told an unambiguous story. Email headers don't lie, and revision histories paint clear pictures of authorship. Whispers grew louder in the hallways. She's done. Can't believe she thought she'd get away with it. Feel sorry for Camille. Fiona slammed her office door so hard one evening that the frosted glass rattled in its frame. I knew she could feel her empire collapsing, brick by brick, everything she'd built on stolen foundations crumbling into dust. And I was the one pushing the walls in. The following Monday, Caldwell called an all-hands meeting. The auditorium was packed again, just like the day this whole mess began, but the energy was completely different. We need to address some significant concerns about leadership integrity within our department, Caldwell announced from the podium. Though no names were mentioned, every single eye in that room turned toward Fiona. She sat rigid in the front row, her cheeks burning crimson, hands trembling as she shuffled papers that didn't need shuffling. I sat 3 rows behind her, the picture of calm professionalism. My posture was straight, my expression neutral, my breathing steady. That was the moment she realized she was completely cornered, surrounded by colleagues who now saw her for exactly what she was. And there was no way out. That night, Fiona showed up at my apartment again, but this time there was no champagne.
Her mascara had streaked down her cheeks, her perfect hair was disheveled, and her voice broke with each word. "Please, Camille," she begged, standing in my doorway like a ghost of her former self. "You have to fix this. You're my sister. Sisters help each other." For just a heartbeat, my chest tightened. Somewhere deep inside, the little girl who'd worshipped her big sister felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered her smug smile at Romano's. I remembered years of being invisible while she sparkled. I remembered the casual cruelty in her voice when she called me the nerd who did background work. "You should have thought of that before you tried to erase me," I said coldly. She left, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the frame, leaving nothing behind but silence and the faint scent of her expensive perfume. That was the last time she'd ever beg me for anything. The following Wednesday, Caldwell called another meeting, this one much smaller. Just department heads and senior staff, the people who made decisions that mattered. "After careful investigation, we've determined that Fiona's promotion cannot move forward," he announced with bureaucratic precision. "Furthermore, we're offering the senior analyst position to someone who has demonstrated both technical expertise and integrity." He looked directly at me. "Camille, would you be interested in taking on additional leadership responsibilities?" The applause was cautious but genuine. People weren't sure what to make of the sudden reversal, but they respected competence when they saw it. I caught Fiona's eye across the room. Her face was a mask of shock and fury, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She had climbed the corporate ladder using my shoulders as steps, only to be crushed beneath my feet when the truth finally emerged. And I wasn't done yet. Over the next few months, I watched Fiona's reputation disintegrate like sugar in rain. Word spread through our industry's professional networks with the speed that only scandal can achieve. Recruiters who'd once courted her stopped returning calls. Networking events became minefields where former contacts avoided eye contact. Her LinkedIn profile transformed from dynamic leader in data analytics to open to new opportunities. I never had to actively destroy her professional standing. Her lies had created a house of cards that collapsed under its own weight once the foundation was exposed. Watching her updates shift from confident proclamations to desperate networking attempts gave me a satisfaction I'd never experienced before. This wasn't loud, dramatic revenge. It was quiet, systematic, and permanent. My phone buzzed occasionally with texts from mutual connections. "Heard about what happened with your sister. Rough situation." I always replied professionally, never gloating, never adding fuel to fires that were already burning. And permanence was the sweetest punishment. 6 months later, our family gathered for Sunday dinner at Romano's again, but this time the dynamics had completely shifted. Dad raised his wine glass toward me with obvious pride. "To Camille, our department leader," he announced. "We always knew you had it in you." Mom nodded enthusiastically, her eyes bright with genuine admiration. "Leading a team of 12 people at 26 years old. We're so proud." Fiona sat across the table, mechanically cutting her chicken parmesan into precise squares. She had lost weight, her face sharper and more angular than before. The golden glow that had always surrounded her had faded into something gray and diminished. The conversation flowed around her like water around a stone. People asked about my work, my team, my future plans. She contributed nothing, just sat there stabbing at her food with increasing violence. The balance of power had shifted permanently. My parents finally saw me not as Fiona's shadow, but as the daughter who had fought for her place and won it through merit rather than theft. And watching was all she could do. Today, Fiona works as a freelance consultant, taking whatever projects she can find. Her client base is small and shrinking, built mostly on people who haven't heard the whispers yet.
Meanwhile, I lead a team of 15 analysts who respect my expertise because they've seen me build solutions from the ground up. My conference room walls are covered in awards and recognition letters, achievements that belong to me alone. I don't need to destroy her further. She's already living in the ruins of choices she made when she decided I was expendable, when she thought my work was just raw material for her ambitions. Every month, I get updates on her struggles through our professional network, contract positions that end early, projects that fall through, the slow, grinding reality of a career built on borrowed credibility. And every time she sees my name in industry publications or conference speaker lists, she's reminded of the sister she tried to erase, now standing taller and stronger than she ever dreamed possible. That's the kind of revenge that doesn't need maintenance or updates. It exists in the permanent record of our choices, in the careers we built, and the bridges we burned. Some ruins last forever, and I built hers to be permanent.
If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Feminine Revenge has got more thrilling stories for you.